Namaste, good evening. The Embassy of India, Bogota, and the Indian community in Colombia is honored to welcome His Excellency Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, Minister of External Affairs of India, on his first visit to Colombia. I would like to invite to the stage Anjali Danzas de India, a local dance group who will perform Nagara Sang Dol. Thank you so much, Anjali Danzas de India. Now, I would like to invite the Ambassador of India to Colombia and Ecuador, His Excellency Banlal Huma, for his welcome remarks.
Honorable External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, senior officials from the Ministry of External Affairs accompanying the Honorable Minister, members of the business delegation from India, members of the Indian community in Colombia gathered here, dear friends, good evening. It is a rare honor for the Indian community in Colombia to welcome a visiting senior member of the government of India. It is therefore a singular privilege for all of us to welcome the Honorable Minister of External Affairs on his first visit to this country. Indeed, it is the first visit ever to Colombia by any External Affairs Minister of India. We welcome you, sir, with great pride and dignity in our midst this evening. Sir, the Indian community in Colombia is not big, but it is a vibrant community. Though we come from different parts of India, we have built up an Indian community here that unites us when it comes to matters of importance and interest to our country and, of course, to our community itself. Many of us have been here for quite some time and are well integrated to the local societies and have nicely adjusted to local conditions. We have taken up diverse occupations, and by and large, most of us have been doing well in our own spheres. We have earned due recognition and respect from the local people for our professionalism, and very much so also for the great country that we come from. Sir, you do not need any introduction to the local Indian community. Many of us are well aware of how you have managed to put India high up there in the Committee of Nations through your various deliberations, including at the highest and most important international forums, and very tactfully dealing with even the harshest critics and India baiters. Thanks to all these efforts of yours, India is now much closer to occupying its rightful position, meaning right on top of the world. We are very keen, therefore, to hear from you this evening and are looking forward to taking home inspiration and encouragement from you. May I therefore request you, sir, to now address the gathering.
Ambassador, members of the Indian community resident here, it's really for me a very great pleasure to meet all of you. Typically, I tend to meet the community at the end of my stay, but I know that you all have your own personal compulsions, professional compulsions. It's much easier to do this in the evening. So I have to, in a sense, voice my expectations rather than share my experiences of Colombia. But I must confess that, I'm on a third leg of a 4-country tour, and I'm yet again a bit taken aback to find that I'm the first foreign minister to come to Colombia, and I will certainly try to make up for the time that has passed. I think, if you look in terms of what a foreign minister does when they come on a visit, obviously there is the larger objective of promoting good relations. But, good relations has different facets. I think most of you would agree that today's India will certainly expect that a big chunk of that is really promoting business, promoting economic cooperation, and really establishing the basis for interactions which would be profitable to both countries. But like people, countries and societies also have their personality. We have our culture, our heritage, our tradition. I just saw an excellent exposition of that. So promoting culture and in a sense what we call generally people-to-people relations is also part of what foreign ministers generally do, what diplomats do when they go out. And there's also the fact that this is a very competitive world, in an international order of almost 200 countries, who gets along with whom, to what degree, and how you come together on important issues or not. I think that is also something which is very important. So to I would say, economic cooperation, to promoting culture and people-to-people relations, I would also add the importance of political understanding. So those are really, in a sense, generic objectives which you do wherever you go out, and certainly that's what I will be doing tomorrow and day after out here in my various meetings. So let me start really by sharing with you what is it, what goes through our mind, certainly my mind, when I think about this region. As someone who started off more than 4 decades ago in diplomacy, I think that era when you thought of Latin America as far away is now definitely behind us. And the fact that so many of you are here sitting before me is proof that geography is not an obstacle. But it's also expressed in a way by numbers, by activities. And the fact is that today India's trade with Latin America is actually approaching an annual turnover of almost $50 billion. And if you think about it, the major hubs that we have, our key trading partners, are all roughly the regions, the Gulf, ASEAN, Europe. You're talking 100 billion plus minus. So, it's not an insignificant development that today a region which is supposedly distant is actually already covered perhaps half the ground in that regard. But trade is one expression. I think we can also see, and perhaps many of you know this better than me, we are seeing an Indian economic footprint in terms of investments, in terms of offices, in terms of projects, in terms of sales, of maintenance, of energy. So the aggregate of all of that too is creating a new image of India. And I can certainly say that on this trip, other than the fact that I am reinforced in my belief that this is not a faraway region, I'm also constantly experiencing from people in the countries I've been in the region that they actually think that India today has come much closer in their calculations. When they look at their major partners, they think of India today as a potentially as a major partner as well. And in all of this, of course, there is the global workplace. The fact is that in this era of globalization, of technology, of mobility, Indians are today, making their presence felt everywhere. And not just with Indian companies. In fact, very often not with Indian companies. And sometimes not with companies at all. I mean, there are people who've gone out as teachers, who've gone out as professionals of various kinds, people who've gone out in the world of art and culture. But definitely, of course, people who've gone out as, service providers, service performers, entrepreneurs. And this Indian global footprint is actually what is distinguishing us today. Because a large part of the world really sees in some form or the other the presence of India. They identify individuals, they identify organizations and corporates. So for them, India is no longer a concept, it's not something you read about, it's not something you talk about. It is actually has a personal meaning, it's actually an experience in many ways to many societies and countries, and that's a very big change. Now, I thought, as someone who has recently come from India, I've been in this region 4 days now, you might also be interested in actually what is happening in the motherland. And it's very hard to sum up such an enormous change in the course of a speech, certainly in the course of a few minutes. But if I were to pick 5 or 6 really important points, and particularly I say this for the benefit of people who live some distant away, even though I know you're all very deeply connected to India. One is a sense today that there is a strong economic recovery, that like every other society, we also went through our trials and tribulations during the COVID period, but that we have come out of it strong, that we have found our own solutions, that today the decisions we took in the last 3 years are actually helping the country on the path to a very robust recovery. And I begin here because when I travel around the rest of the world, and perhaps I travel more than most people, that kind of recovery, that kind of sentiment is not something I see very often. So if I were to really compare the feeling in India about where we are, where we're going, what our prospects are, that there is a much greater degree of optimism, especially economic optimism in India. The second change is actually in regard to digital. The last 3 years, you have no idea how amazingly digital India has got. Digital, it's not in a tech sense, it's not even in a business sense. It is actually from the point of view of the ordinary citizen. The number of people who, find all answers to life in what they are holding in their hand, that has suddenly exploded. That people, because during this COVID period, a lot of people were, looking through the digital medium to conduct their lives in some form. They were looking for education, they were looking at health, they were looking at government information, they were looking at vaccination notices, when will my place in the queue come. But it has also, transposed to something much bigger, because it has become actually today a medium of public delivery. That if you go to villages of India, and I do a fair amount of internal travel other than global travel. If you go to villages of India today, actually villagers know what are their rights and entitlements, because that is digitally communicated to them. They know today it is their day for the ASHA worker to come. They know today that it is their right, that their turn for a gas cylinder, or that they are supposed to go and they have become a beneficiary of a housing program, or they are entitled really to government support for fertilizers or seeds. So the sense, which perhaps there was maybe a decade ago, maybe even 5 years ago, that digital was primarily for, in a sense, urban middle class. I think we have actually managed to democratize and almost universalize technology. And that is really an amazing story. And I must tell you, when I go and talk to other governments, perhaps more than anything else, This is an aspect of India which people find very fascinating. I've come recently out of a tour of Africa, and before that I was in the Middle East. And there's a lot of interest, how are you doing it? What is the technology? Can we access it? Which are the companies? And this is done also from a governance point of view, that it is able to deliver to the intended beneficiary. And therefore, in that sense, the wastage, the corruption, that's come down very dramatically. The third aspect, the third big change which anybody would see in India, and this has always been the perennial complaint of non-resident Indians, this is the infrastructure. That there's been a long-standing feeling of people who come back from societies, from countries where they think that the roads work better, the airports work better, the metro is there. Today, when you come to India, you can actually see. I don't want to make comparisons on the flow of traffic, but certainly I will tell you that it's, even major cities in India, the amount of, road building, highway building, metro lines being constructed, airports. Second, third, fourth level towns today have airports. And air services itself has become far more affordable. So there's a kind of a multiple level infrastructure build up, which interestingly, probably for the first time in our history, is actually integrated. That there is an initiative called Gati Shakti, so that, because very often, there's that very something which all of you would identify, which is somebody will build a road and the next guy will come and cut it to make the water pipe, and then you repair the road, and then the next person would come to put the optical fiber cable, and then the next person will come for the gas pipeline. Now today, a lot of this, because there is an integrated approach, and because it is very technology enabled. So actually the infrastructure building has got more efficient, it has got more collective in a way, and certainly for the citizen, I think it's been a very useful development. A fourth change which I would flag, and something I experienced personally, is actually in the field of skills, of innovation, of startups. I know some of you at least are from that field. And you can see this particularly in educational institutions. That I grant you, it is actually 50 years since I did my bachelor's degree. So I am not even pretending to be contemporary. But I think even a few years ago, the mindset of educational institutions were really very orthodox. It was, in a sense, about exams, it was about results, it was about a certain kind of a beaten track to what was considered good jobs. And today you can see a very different feeling among the youth, much more willing to innovate, people who actually proudly show you, even when they are in university, that they have done inventions. Any institution you go to today will insist that, no, please come, there are some startups our students have done, there's some patents they have earned. So this is something again which is noteworthy. And finally, there is actually something going on this year, which all of you would have read about, but I can tell you it has certainly created a buzz in the country, and that is our G20 presidency. Others have held the presidency before us, obviously, but nobody has done it the way we have done. And nobody has done it the way we have done because the G20 involves about 200 meetings, but we are not doing it just in the big cities, not in the capital and the metropolis. We have taken the G20 to 60 cities and towns of India, to every state and union territory. So there's actually a kind of a national collective effort today. to showcase India. That, from roads to railway stations, there are people autonomously on their own doing G20 events, feeding into what government is doing because they want to show that they too are part of it. So that's the kind of picture about India that I want to share with you. And I also want about India to stress to you that we have, marked recently 75 years of independence. And clearly in the 75 years, there have been challenges, there have been achievements, there are things we are proud of, there have been shortcomings. But there's also now a great focus, not just on the times ahead, but actually on an era. That the thinking today, starting from the Prime Minister's own vision, which he has put forward to the nation, is really how do we think 25 years ahead? That it's a generation, it's an era, that whatever we do, we must have that period of 25 years ahead of us, and therefore we must think big, we must plan big, we must synchronize it in a way in which we get the best results of 25 years. And that, I would suggest to you, is a very different India, because that kind of ambition and that kind of, I would say, almost hunger to succeed is something which is very palpable, and it's something that all of you should know. So let me say a few words about how the world sees it, because yes, you all live abroad. I know you must be talking about India in your workplace to your friends out here. But my sense is that probably there are a few things we have done which have made an exceptional impact on the world. The one which I would, without hesitation, pick is Vaccine Maitri. The fact that we gave vaccines to about 100 countries, and many of them were countries like in this region, where there were accumulations of vaccine close by, but they could not access it, and they are enormously grateful even now to the fact that a distant country made that effort and was the first vaccine provider. Before coming here, I actually have done two collective gatherings, one with the Caribbean nations, the CARICOM, and this morning I met what are called the SICA nations, the Central American nations, and the bulk of them actually got their first vaccines from India, and it's something they don't take it just as medical assistance. They actually take it as a kind of outlook of India, which has in many ways very profoundly moved them. While the COVID and vaccines are obviously still fresh in our minds, it's also a fact that in many ways other things we do in difficult situations also impact the world. In the last decade, we have built up a reputation as what we call a first responder. When something happens, we are quick to move because we've developed that own capability for within the country, and now we feel we are good enough, experienced enough, and responsible enough to do that outside. And as a recent example, of course, I would cite to you that when you had this devastating earthquake in Turkey, we were among the early nations to go in. Within 24 hours, actually, you had a disaster rescue team starting to reach Turkey. There are some issues which trouble all countries in the world, concern them more and more. Climate is one. And here too, there's been a big change in India's positioning and India's image. We are seen today as a climate leader, a country which has done a lot on solar energy, on renewables, which is actually coming up with a whole series of ideas and practices and institutions. Similarly, I think on terrorism, how to counter terrorism, I think today a much more united global position on terrorism is at least partly due to the efforts that we have made in the last 10 years. And there is also that feeling that today's India has the ability to bridge the difficult issues and frankly sometimes the difficult arguments of the day. So it could be something like the Ukraine conflict, where you have, in a sense, the Western countries on one side and Russia on the other, or it could be problems which deal with the developed world and the developing world. But in all of this, from all quarters, there is today that feeling that India is a country which, in some way or the other, can serve as a bridge, as someone who brings differing opinions together, helps to find a solution, and to some extent, that's exactly what we helped to do in G20 last year. So let me finally conclude. As a foreign minister, as someone visiting who has the responsibility for that ministry, what does foreign policy mean to all of you? You live outside the country. A lot of what I said may be very interesting, maybe not. You may take pride in it, but I think you should also ask yourself how much of it impacts you existentially. That your daily life, tomorrow, next week, next month, what difference does it make to you what we do? And I would suggest to you today that this India, this picture that I present to you, the picture at home, the picture abroad, has actually contributed to our collective standing, and that's to your individual benefit as well. That in the eyes of people around you, if you are walking a little bit taller today, in some part, it is what is happening in your country, with your country, about your country. The second is about culture. It is about your comfort. It's about your rights. There is today a much greater inclination on the part of the world to make that effort to understand India. That an India which is stronger, more powerful, more impactful, the rest of the world also takes interest and says, okay, now I'm giving you a very, very obvious example. Let us say yoga. So, but it's all, it's about food, it's about dress, it's about our practices, sometimes even issues of faith. There is a much greater willingness on the part of the world to make an effort to understand us and what we are about. But there is also the question of your well-being, because at the end of the day, you are out in the world, and our effort as a government, as a country, is to see that to the best of our ability, we have your back, that wherever you are, in whatever way we can be of support to you, we try to be. And the fact that if you lose your passport, the replacement is easier. Or frankly, even to get your passport in India today is very much easier. But it can be sometimes the big things, I mean, we are right now in the middle of an operation in Sudan, where, because, when I speak about a global workplace, there is really no country in the world where there are no Indians working. And when this problem started in Sudan on the 14th of this month, my first thought was, okay, how many people are there? Can we quickly get an estimate? Can we get people connected up? And the fact is, when things are good, not everybody makes an effort to register. Not everybody feels the embassy needs to know that you are there. So I would encourage you, please, to do it. These are nice days, and I hope they remain nice days. But what happens is when trouble comes, then we have to scramble really to assess, what is our community, and our community sometimes can be a very expansive definition of that term. And then you discover that, in a particular place there were more people than you thought there were. And the operation which we are doing now, Operation Kaveri, in fact today we had the first ship bring back people and 2 of our aircraft take out people. So about 500 people actually managed to leave Sudan and get to the safety of Saudi Arabia, from where we'll bring them back home. But I cite that to you because increasingly, these are problems that will happen. Last year they happened in Ukraine. The year before they happened with the COVID. The year before maybe they happened in a place like Mozambique, or a few years ago in an earthquake in Nepal, or a civil war in Yemen. So the fact is, for people setting out in the world, whether they may be going there for livelihood, to set up a business, or even if you go out as a tourist, I think it's important today that you are assured that you have a government which sees your welfare, your protection as a imperative, and just doesn't see it. It puts systems in place. So if you look at the kind of changes which I'm talking about, the fact that we can replace your passport so quickly today. I mean, there were days not so long ago when you'd go to an embassy and they'd say, yes, we'll send a message to the RPO who issued your passport, and we'll check you are really you before we do anything about it. Now, if you're a stranded tourist or someone who needs a replacement passport, it would take days, sometimes weeks. Now, or we even have a fund today for people who are in real distress, that they may not have the resources abroad to deal with their situation. So these are really some thoughts which I felt I should share with you. Certainly, my message to the government here would be that we are very keen. We are in this region. We are going to be in this region bigger, more intensively, in many more ways. So we certainly see Colombia as one of the key countries of this region. We would like to grow our business. We would like to expand our cooperation. I would like to see more exchanges. I would definitely be interested in more political understanding, stronger political understanding. But when I overall present India to you, the state of India to you, I leave you with the thought that today you have an India which is in a way getting more ready for the world. And you have a world today which is acknowledging the changes in India and getting more ready for India. So overall, I would say, I like to communicate to you a good feeling about what is happening in your motherland. But I would like to conclude my remarks once again by expressing my appreciation, because, we are very frank about it, that the image of India in the ultimate analysis is made by the Indian community. That any government, any people, any society, finally their daily rub is not with me, it's with you. So their sense of what is, their sense of the progress of India, the capabilities of India, the personality, the traditions of India are actually your work, your life, your activities. So I'm really grateful to you, because in a way you do part of my job. So I come here to take credit for a lot of what you people do. So a very big thank you. And I want to say once again, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you. I'll stand here. Sure, we can take questions. Yeah. No, so, huh? No, don't worry. No, it's okay. You can give me, no, I'll handle it from here.
Yes, I'll moderate.
Why don't you come here then?
Thank you, sir.
Please.
On gratitude to our Honorable External Affairs Minister for sharing his thought-provoking ideas with all of us and putting in perspective the India-Colombia relations from the angle of the Indian community and the role that Indian community can play in the enhancement and strengthening of the bilateral relations. I would also like to thank our Honorable Minister for apprising us of the importance of the relations for the Indian community present here. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to have questions and any suggestions from the Indian community present here, and our Honorable Minister would like to answer them and address them. So, yes. Please introduce yourself.
I think it might be good if you give him the mic.
Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening, sir. I'm Amit Batra, right? I work for MNC in agriculture commodities, basically. So first of all, I really want to extend a warm welcome to you for coming here. As Mr. Ambassador said, this is the first time External Affairs Minister is coming here. But apart from that, it is a matter of great pride that we are sharing a room with you, a personality like you. Probably having a nap with you, if it is possible, not sure. But as you said, right, we really feel tall, right, in the international community with all the policies which you have introduced, with the comments, with the way you have put the foreign media in their place, who have been out trying to troll us, right, on some preconceived notions. So, sir, my question is not a very political or anything, but last time when General Saab was here, General V.K. Singh, right, I asked the same thing and he told that it was very clear on voting rights for NRIs, right? So I think it has been a long pending issue, right? And with such a big population living abroad, I think we are missing that part, right, sir? All my life, I have voted only 2 times when I was in college, right? So I think I would like to probably exercise my right and right now with contributing towards the current government, right? So probably that is it.
Thank you. I suspect I'll give you the same answer which General V.K. Singh gave you. So, because, look, voting rights abroad is a complicated issue, particularly when we have the kind of numbers that we do. And there are many, there are really, truly, I mean, this is not a diplomatic dodge. There are many complicated aspects, people who are nationals, people who sometimes take passports but have not surrendered their passport, people who have overseas citizenship, which means they're nationals of another country. So at the moment, the compromise that was struck, which was struck during the Prime Ministership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, was OCI, that's been tweaked at times, the PIO, OCI got fused. That's still the sort of current, I would say, consensus zone. But it's an ongoing debate. I mean, I'm not suggesting to you that it's a frozen position either. I mean, there are many people who have sentiments similar to yours and make it felt. There are people who think there are downsides to the extension of voting rights abroad. So we'll have to go through this, So I think you'll need one more visit from me before I can give you a different answer.
Thank you, sir. The next question could be, I would request you to just, ask the questions and keep it short because we have to rush for another.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Warm welcome in Bogota again. And it was privileged to be with you yesterday in Panama and today traveling together. So, sir, my question is, again, one extension of the question. Is India looking at permitting dual citizenship?
That's honestly, I was still being a little bit more flexible to his question. I think dual citizenship is frankly much harder, because if you look at the world and there are not that many big countries that permit dual citizenship. It has a lot of implications, I mean, including security implications. So it's not. For him at least, I said there's an active discussion. I'm not even sure I can say that to you.
My second question is, sir, what are the 5 industries which we should look for where India will take the leadership position in next 5 to 10 years globally?
Look, I would not quite put it in the way in which you asked the question. I would say our effort today is to get into global supply chains, because it's not like a country decides that I'm going to dominate that industry. Yes, some countries do that. China, for example, made such plans. It was part of the blueprint, and not just blueprint, they are actually making very active efforts. I think our way of approaching it is different. And part of the reason is also we have to make up for lost time, because, when you look at the big periods when there was industrialization going on in the world, we did not take full advantage of it. We made it hard for manufacturing to flourish in India in different ways. And it's only in recent years that kind of support which business should get. And it's, when I say business should get, part of the problem is even how we envisage it. That when we think of, say, manufacturing or which industries should we dominate, we tend to think of big companies and big products. Actually, you build strengths by having an entire supply chain at home. That you have to support your small and medium scale industries if you actually have to eventually support the larger ones. And that's not something that we did. In many ways, they were very disadvantaged in terms of even foreign competition. So our effort today, we have picked 14 sectors and actually have a policy of what is called production-linked incentives. 15 now, because we added semiconductor mission to it, which is in those sectors, if companies, could be even foreign companies, set up business in India and add to the production in India, then we incentivize that. And that's a way of actually attracting manufacturing to India. And it's proved very successful in some cases. You heard me say this in Panama as well, that the production of Apple phones is a very notable example of that. But there are many others. Medical devices, for example, is another case where there's been a lot of production. We're looking at machinery of various kinds. So I would imagine, if you ask me, say, 2030, where would we be in 2030? Our objective in 2030 is to be much more deeply entrenched in global supply chains. And we think that the real contribution, the one thing we have which the world will need increasingly, will actually be talent. And the change that I see, and I see this change even the last 2 or 3 years, that there was a time when, we would be pushing to say, okay, can you increase the H-1B numbers? Today, actually, I have countries very interested in what they call mobility agreements. We've concluded one with Germany, just done one with Austria, did UK, France, in a limited way with Japan. These are countries which realize today, if you look, for example, at chips, at semiconductors, there's a massive shortage of the requisite skills in that field. So I think that's really the big opportunity that we should be looking at. Sorry. Yeah, please.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I'm Karthik, working for Tata Consultancy. I'm Karthik, working for Tata Consultancy Services over here. It's a very generic question, sir. How has your life changed being a diplomat and now being in the ministry, being a minister and a face of a political party? How do you manage both of these things?
For a moment, I thought you were going to ask me whether my life changed after leaving Tata's, which I was there briefly. Look, it's a very different experience. It's a big shift in line. I don't know if any one of you have ever done that in life, which is if you have done one particular specialization or a profession, to to shift to another one, though mind you, I mean, I'm helped by the fact that there is a common, if I was a minister, not in the foreign ministry, but in some other ministry, then I think the change would have been even sharper. So for me, at least the domain is the same, if the role is very different and the profession is very different. I would say at the end of the day, the really big difference is, and here I'm kind of speaking for all politicians, politicians really work very hard. I must tell you this. I only discovered it when I became a politician. That you cannot say no, to obviously anything reasonable. When you say you're at the service of people, believe me, that has a real implication. The pressures on you are more, the responsibility on you is more. And the difference I would really say is you have that bigger picture today as a political person, which you don't have, however, you may be the best diplomat or the best civil servant, but there is a limit which your own profession has set for yourself. This is beyond that limit, that you actually understand, in a sense, I would say not just your own vertical, but you have a 360 view of the entire landscape. And then you are able to look at your own vertical in a very different way. So it's that. I think in many ways you also need a different kind of personality to deal with this. I'm trying to evolve, sometimes maybe not so successfully, but let's see.
Thank you very much for everything that you do. I'm going to keep it short. So my question would be, Indian rupee is going global. What is the vision that India has? And what is the added responsibility that every one of us as Indian citizens should have?
First of all, I'm not a finance person. But when we speak about rupee going global, it's a very long process. It's the different stages and different aspects of it. At this time, mostly there's the practice of settling trade settlements using rupee. The UPI, we are looking at actively at UPI partners so that transactions there are much smoother and of a more competitive nature. We're trying to promote the RuPay card because there's no reason why I should necessarily have a card which is not made in India if I'm capable of producing a card and maintaining a card that is made in India. I feel it would be a very gradual process. A global currency has an enormous consequence, is a huge responsibility. And you see, a lot of countries who spoke about it, it's not been that easy for them to do. They've been very, very deliberate about the direction in which we have moved. So I do not minimize the challenges of becoming global.
And the last question, sir.
Good evening, sir. My name is Jaideep Shukla. I represent Hetero, which is present in every market in Latin America. It's a pharmaceutical company from India. As many of us here, I get to listen to you as frequently as possible for me. And I would like to remember you as Mr. Dr. S. Jaishankar and not just the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India. You've been, sir, out for more than 40 years, and I would like to learn from you. What do you think is that one thing which we as Indians should never forget to be consistently growing and becoming big becoming big globally?
You know, I don't have an easy, immediate answer. I must be truthful. When I first started going out, one big difference would be there'll be very few places in the world where I could even see this many Indians in the room. You know, this was a period when you went to countries, if you actually saw another person looking like you, you'd cross the street just to go and talk to them, you know. I mean, so it was a very different era in a way. It was also, you know, the communications was very different. You were lucky, you know, we were lucky because we were in an embassy, so at least once a week somebody would fly in a newspaper. But the fact, and these were days where you had to book calls in order to speak to people. So it's an era which I cannot, you know, it would be impossible for me to explain this to my children, leave alone grandchildren, okay? But why am I saying that to you? I'm saying that to you because at that time, maybe our objectives were more immediate, ambitions were also less grand. We were in many ways trying to survive well. You know, that was really, in a sense, the state of the nation. And you know, when we look at these 75 years, I think it's very important to reflect on those 75 years because I probably am the oldest person in this room. But I can, but I suspect most of you, for example, would not have seen large-scale starvation in India. And I remember seeing it when I was about 10 years old. You wouldn't remember conflicts of a kind which people who are older would do, you know. Or even the kind of some of the, I would say, social, political turbulence which we went through in the initial years. I'm saying that because over a period of time, you know, we've had our ups, we've had our downs, that's the nature of how societies evolve. But today, we actually have a chance to think big, to do big. The world, you know, my real message to you today is the world is much more friendly towards us. The world is much more respectful, much more accepting of us, much more willing to work with us. So our challenge today is not limited by capabilities. The capabilities will grow. I can see capabilities growing every year. It's actually the scale of our ambitions. That how do we school ourselves to think bigger? And it can be an enterprise, you know, it can be an individual, it can be a government. But that is really the transition I feel like we are in cusp. That's why when I spoke to you saying, look, there's an era ahead, you know, what Prime Minister Modi called Amrit Kal. We should actually start thinking like, okay, next 25 years, where will the country be? If enough people start thinking about it, there will be a behavioral change which will happen. And if there is a behavioral change, there will be real changes that would happen. So, you know, all of us, as we get along in life, you would like to be younger. It's a very natural human feeling. But I'm telling you, I would like to be younger because I would love to see where we are 25 years from now. That, you know, to look back at the struggles of, let us say, the last 50 years, and then look at the next 25 years. I think that's the inflection point at which we are today. And I must also say this. I'm very, you know, the more I travel in India, the more I, you know, see younger people, their mindset, their levels of confidence, you know, sometimes I use very trivial examples. Actually, they're not trivial, but let us say trivial in inverted commas. I tell people, look, for example, at sports, you know, how sports has changed. Once there was that self-belief that we were capable of winning. So it happens in business. that there was a time when only really big companies went out. You could not imagine, let us say, a company like yours going out 20 years ago. Even if they were capable, they wouldn't have had the courage to go out. So today, you go to places, I'm just amazed at what our people are doing. And it's a great source of strength, I must tell you. That, when you sort of, that question which my young friend asked from TCS at the back. Yes, when you are an ambassador, you have this feeling you represent the country. A great feeling. When you are a foreign minister and you feel that national self-confidence and that kind of spirit which today there is in India, believe me, it's a huge source of confidence and strength for me. So it's a long-winded answer, but I would really say, short answer, think big. So once again, really, thank you all very much. I know you've all taken out time late in the evening, but I want to say that, it's really been an enormous pleasure meeting you people, talking to you. I am very confident that, it will not take many years for someone in my position or me to come back here, or someone higher than me to come here. So I very much, hope that the community can contribute to the respect, to the image, to the credibility, to the strength of India. Once again, tomorrow, as I set out in my job, I can say that this experience for me has been very, very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Dr. Jay Shankar, for your remarks. Now, I would like to invite you all for a group picture, please. By rows?
Yeah. Maybe the first two rows can please come up. Yes, yes. I was giving it to him. Switch it off. Now the next row may please come up.